Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, first off, Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. And I believe, I couldn't totally confirm it, but I believe that's the Hispanic Day Parade in the background. I'm trying to filter it out because we're trying to do movie math here, but I must say it's actually a very nice parade. And if I didn't have to film movie math, I would certainly enjoy its musical stylings that I can hear in my current location. But yes, thank you for rolling with the punches. And, you know, I have this new location, well, temporary location, for a couple of months. And it's got occasionally some very festive noise issues. But we're just going to work around them. And I think my filtering through the microphone and the editing program, for the most part, can make it that we can still have our conversations. And today, we're talking movie math. All right, so the movie business is floundering, not just post-COVID, but also because of technological advancements. So Hollywood has decided that their salvation lies in consolidation? Yes, as I told you when AT&T first sold Warner Bros. To Discovery, that Zazzie's mission from day one was to flip it. He's flipping it like they flipped those houses, right? And while he'd expected to flip it next year, he's been trying to flip it for a while, but it's saddled with tremendous debt. So his idea was to split it into two different factions. And CNN was like, why am I over here with all the like cable channels? And it's like, because your ratings suck. But Zazie was going to stick all the debt with that company and then try and sell off the really prestige formats in the other grouping. Creating two more, one manageable bite and then one bite where he didn't care what happened to it. But here come the Ellisons, willing to swallow Warner Brothers whole. I was very tempted to make an inappropriate joke there, but I controlled myself. All right, so it should be noted, by the way, that Larry Ellison is technically a tech bro, just a very early one, before it was fashionable. Or the league of it's like the supervillain league from DC or whatever. But yes, Oracle is one of the earliest tech companies which Ellison co-founded back in 1977. Word is the Ellisons, by the way, just made an offer over the weekend. They're opening salvo. So of course Zazie said no, you never take the first offer. And also Zazzie's job is to get as much money as possible. Not just for the shareholders, but himself and AT&T, by the way, who are also still shareholders. They're not gone. They're still here. And then also, word is that the Ellisons don't plan to keep Zazie around. So he wants that sweet, sweet golden parachute. As I said, this story is just starting to take shape, but I wouldn't be surprised if this deal was closed by the end of the year, because Papa Ellison wants a studio on the scale of Disney for his baby boy. And he has the money to make that happen. Yes, Disney, who started consolidation in Hollywood in the first place to compete with Netflix, interestingly enough, although Iger arguably was planting the seeds for mass consolidation in Hollywood with his earlier purchases, right? I believe that to the large extent is Iger's true legacy. But beware, other studios, because even if you have huge scale and massive amounts of IP, it doesn't mean things are going to go well for you. Because let's talk Disney. Oh, the Disney drama. And while some of you delight in Disney drama, and other studios have been helping out and doing quite well this year. In fact, this has been Warner Brothers' year to shine. But Disney, they are, not, when they say tent poles, which, hold up the whole rest of the release slate, Disney is so big that they've often held up the whole scenario for everybody, not just the other studios, but the theater owners, those of us who cover movies, It's, Disney very often is the engine in so many ways. So it's a real problem that they, it's okay to have a miss here and there, but this is a particularly bad year for Disney. We have, thankfully, Universal's Wicked for Good coming, but Disney is supposed to save the rest of the year with Predator, Zootopia 2, and Avatar 3. So it's pretty alarming that their first big blockbuster of the fall season, Tron Ares, couldn't even meet its very moderate expectations. I'll be covering all these movies, by the way, from reviews to box office and more, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the tea. At the very least, it'll be a very interesting conversation. How do you think these films are going to do? Now, to be fair, what's even more concerning is that Tron Ares has very solid audience scores. B+, as I often tell you, is the lowest cinema score can go and still be considered a positive. Unless you're a horror movie, then you can go into the C range. And this is also a movie designed to not only be seen on a premium screen, but in 3D. This should be a must-see theatrical experience at a time when that's the name of the game, convincing people that this is a film, you have a movie that they have to go see in theaters that won't be as good if you watch it at home on digital or streaming. It's interesting. I finally got to see Tron Ares in IMAX 3D myself yesterday after missing out on that format for my press screening. And I thought it was a truly glorious experience, even better than I thought it would be. And I feel it's an experience not to be missed. Although the film, as I said in my review, never really gets higher than an 8, where you would expect a blockbuster like this to reach an 11 at multiple points throughout the film, but it never does. Also, I went with some friends, and one of them pointed out that as the movie business flounders, you lose one of the incentives of going to the multiplex, and that's getting to see a movie with a crowd. If people stop going to the movies and you're not in a crowded theater enjoying that energy of feeding off of each other's excitement, why not just wait for it to hit digital or streaming down the road? Because that is, I think, for movie fans, in addition to the big screen and getting to go out, one of the reasons that people do like to go to the theater, for that party atmosphere. So that's just a real problem. Although I don't think that Tron Ares was very well advertised. I think that they didn't drive home how good the IMAX 3D experience was. I think that they didn't, 3D showings weren't prioritized a lot of the time. And for some theaters, they were only in the afternoon or very late. And I just don't think it was positioned as well as it could have been, which is a really unfortunate situation. But there are other factors at play with this movie. In fact, yesterday, I asked you why it seems that some of you want Tron Ares to fail. And while there are a couple of factors, again, at play here, as I said, the answer was overwhelmingly Mr. Jared Leto. The Masters of the Universe movie has got to be sweating something fierce right now because Jared Leto is their Skeletor. Who casts Jared Leto after Morbius didn't just tank, but became a pop culture slogan for failure? Leto is in Tron, though, for a very simple reason, as we've discussed before. Because after the Tron Legacy sequel had fallen apart, it was Leto's idea as a Tron superfan to make Tron Ares. And he signed on in 2017, still hot off of his Oscar, and then also Suicide Squad, which had suffered a lot of ridicule, but it still made a lot of money. And Hollywood, who's very risk averse, is easily blinded by, gold and green. They're like, but he's got an Oscar and a big box office track record. And, they don't really, again, I often think a big problem with Hollywood is that a lot of the people who make the movies don't consume their own product. So they don't really understand the space that they're in, unfortunately. Now, sure, Tron Ares, even though they made that deal in 2017, didn't actually film until early 2024, post-Morbius. And we were telling them, don't do it! This is a horrible mistake! But surely Leto had a pay-or-play deal. That means if they don't make the movie with him, they still have to pay him. And Disney clearly didn't want to pay him to make him go away. I think it would have been well worth it, to be honest with you. Also, though, the mouse gambled that since their Tron ride is so popular, the movie would be too, but they lost that bet. Interestingly, Tron Ares opened lower than Tron Legacy did 15 years ago. Ouch. And on par with another Disney attraction movie, Jungle Cruise, although that was released during the pandemic and day and date on Disney+. Tron Ares at least opened bigger than 2023's Haunted Mansion, which, by the way, also featured Jared Leto in a cameo as the big bad, the Hatbox Ghost. Someone over at Disney really liked Jared Leto. Sometimes that just happens. Remember Sony's odd love affair with Aaron Taylor Johnson? I hope these guys save their money while they're getting it. But in Leto's case, as an Oscar winner, why else do you sign on to play Skeletor? Unless you need that sweet, sweet cash. And it gets worse because the overseas number for Tron Ares aren't good either. Ain't nobody coming to save this movie, at least in the theatrical space, because those audience scores, again, are good. So maybe it can find an audience on digital like Ballerina was ultimately able to do after its own disappointing theatrical run. Although, again, the big screen and 3D are such a big part of what I think make this a special viewing experience. It's still good in 2D, but man, you got one more week. I really think you should try it in IMAX 3D. However, not only is Jared Leto an issue for this film, but it seems that maybe people just don't like Tron overall. None of the films have ever done well, and very few new fans were drawn to this film, with only 30% of the audience under 25. Yikes. For this type of movie, that's a big problem. The trades are pointing out that this is also like Blade Runner 2049, which, what do you know, also featured Jared Leto. It takes Hollywood such a long time to learn what we can so clearly see. I always think, are they not bringing up these people's pages over on box office websites and just taking a look? Do they really take their management and agent's word for it when they're pitching these actors to them? I'd be like, hold on a minute. Let me Google their box office. And then I'd say, get the hell out of my office. All right, so anyway, so ridiculous. All right, so Blade Runner, for all its hype in the cinephile space, mainstream audiences have never liked Blade Runner very much either. Also, Ryan Gosling and Evan Peters. Hey, I love both of them. But movie stars might not be what they once were. A lot of people always like to say there are no more movie stars, but box office poison still exists, or to be a little bit more kind about it, actors that just can't sell tickets. They're still definitely a thing. And Disney did it again! Trying to broaden a franchise's appeal to female moviegoers with multiple female characters front and center, only for women still not to show up. Although, again, they didn't really advertise any of these characters going into the film's release. But in the process, they probably lost some male viewers. Because there were, Greta Lee and Jodie Turner-Smith, who, by the way, I think are both fantastic in the movie, particularly Turner-Smith. But they actually have the bulk of the screen time, despite Leto and Peters technically as the hero and villain of the film. And word on that got out, right before the movie opened. And again, I'm sure it kept a couple of people from going. At least the diversity demos are good. Do you think Tron Ares can find an audience somewhere down the line on digital or streaming, right? Or is there just no saving it? As for the weekend's other new release, Paramount's Roofman, yeah, Paramount really needs IP. That's why they're going after Warner Brothers. But Roofman had very similar audience scores to Tron Ares, but a better critic score, yet opened even worse with a paltry 8 million. While Marvel is being very good to Channing Tatum right now, even bringing him back for Avengers Doomsday, which he was teasing like crazy during his Roofman press tour, Tatum desperately needs, and he was saying some pretty good stuff. I think he was doing a good job. I'm kind of like raising the hype for Doomsday. But he desperately needs another hit he can call his own, because he has had a recent string of debuts all under 10 million. His last big hit was thanks to teaming up with one of the only movie stars left, Sandy Bullock. Perhaps that's why Tatum, also on his recent press tour for Roofman, called out producer Neil H. Moritz by name as being this is great gossip, as being the only one who won't drop his fee as a producer for 23 Jump Street. Everyone else involved with the film is willing to drop their fee. And Tatum says Moritz won't only not drop his fee, but he's asking for a massive producing fee. And that is the only thing keeping 23 Jump Street from getting made. And keep in mind, which Channing Tatum didn't bring up, but I will, Moritz has Fast and Furious money. He is a main producer on those movies. That means he has so much money. He doesn't need Jump Street money. And he would also surely, by taking a cut, you don't just take a cut out of the goodness of your heart. You're supposed to get a chunk of the back end to potentially make up for it, right? Everyone agrees to take on the risk. And I think obviously, Channing Tatum says the script's incredible. I think 23 Jump Street would probably do quite well. Neil, baby, if everyone else on a film, including the stars, are willing to lower their fee, read the room. I think Tatum was right to call Moritz out. And also because clearly, Tatum's desperate. I mean, obviously people have already gone to Moritz and said, please, please, please drop your fee. What do you think? Was Tatum right to call Moritz out like this? Then Sony had a religious-themed family film, Soul on Fire, which, thanks to a very dismal top 10, managed to open in 5th place. All right, speaking of good gossip, let's talk devastatingly poorly performing Oscar movies. So get this. Not only did Dwayne Johnson's The Smashing Machine fall 69% in just its second weekend, but Jennifer Lopez's Kiss of the Spider-Woman couldn't even open in the top 10, debuting with what? Just $1 million. Oh my gosh. Going into the weekend, it had already abysmal industry projections of just $3 million, which, although based on the horrible top 10, would have at least put it in the middle, but instead, even on over 1,000 screens, it couldn't get into the top 10. And you can see how low the bar is to get into the top 10 this week. The critic score is bad, the audience score is even worse, and CinemaScore didn't bother to poll it. At this point, I don't think that either The Rock or Jennifer Lopez are getting Oscar nominations, and maybe even not Golden Globe nominations. What do you think of their Oscar prospects at this point? Roadside Attractions, to be fair, barely advertised Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and there are some good performances in it. Although, as I said in my recent review, it's really more of a streaming film, so perhaps it will find its audience there. But again, I think its Oscar chances are, almost non-existent for both films at this point. But excellent news for Warner Bros. Awards contender One Battle After Another, which had a stellar hold in its third weekend. It had a bigger drop last weekend. The drops are slowing down, which means that word of mouth and awards hype are slowly but surely convincing people to check out the film in theaters. That's very good. This is the kind of solid, steady performance that will help keep it in the awards conversation, even as other contenders enter the marketplace. And cleverly, very good timing here, because One Battle After Another will hit digital, just as the first awards organizations, Critics' Choice, like myself, and also Golden Globes, when we start to vote. So that the opening date actually ends up being quite good for One Battle After Another. Pretty solid holds across the board this week, which makes the Smashing Machine's massive drop all the more embarrassing. Wow! Speaking of holdovers, look at The Conjuring and Demon Slayer, both over $100 million domestic, with The Conjuring actually sort of close to $200 million, just domestic. It is the most successful film in the prolific franchise by over $100 million. Wow, Zazie will surely be mentioning that in his negotiations with Paramount. And One Battle After Another. What a time to have the best year that he's had as the studio head, right as he's getting ready to sell it. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, he's certainly well positioned, even with the mountains of debt that Warner Brothers is shouldering. Now let's switch over to streaming, starting with Nielsen per usual, this time for the second week of September, where, not only is Peacemaker still not charting with its 4th episode, but Alien Earth with its 6th episode has also totally fallen off even the originals chart. Oh man, that might be why there was no season 2 announcement at their New York Comic-Con panel this weekend. And if they didn't take that opportunity to announce a season 2, it is not looking good. I think at this point, I think if they didn't announce it there, I'm very concerned they're not going to have a season 2 for that show. James Gunn also announced this week, in the wake of an absolutely horrible fan reaction to his Peacemaker season 2 finale, which was totally his own fault for overhyping it, that there will be no Peacemaker season 3. However, we will see the characters and the elements that he did introduce, that he clearly thought were a bigger deal than they were, in the near future in the DCU. Gunn has got to be wishing he'd played things differently with Peacemaker, which has certainly weighed down the DC hype after his somewhat successful Superman movie. Again, more successful than Marvel, which made it look better than it was. But he'll very likely soon have new bosses to answer to, and that he's not on his strongest footing. Lantern, set for early 2026 on HBO, which thankfully he did not write and direct and only is overseeing as the head of DC, I think that'll be his first real test as to whether or not he can let other people play. Well, he did a good, well, Penguin, I believe, was before him, right? It's really the first test because, he's the one who put Lanterns together, if he can have other people play successfully in his sandbox. But boy, they really need to change the conversation as soon as possible around DC. Couldn't be worse timing with the new buyers coming in for James Gunn. All right, so I don't know if we'll talk about it. It's early days, but I will at least say right now, I'm sure he wishes that he had not overhyped. I think he probably wishes to some degree he'd never agreed to make a Peacemaker season 2. But I think they decided that before he even took the DC gig and Superman. And also I think it's an ego thing where he wanted the show to have a second season. Famous last words. All right, so I told him that the first season of Peacemaker wasn't successful, and he got really upset with me about it. All right, so as for the shows and movies that did chart, Netflix is still dominating thanks to Wednesday and K-pop Demon Hunters. And wow, look at SpongeBob's numbers on Paramount Plus. Better than Bluey. The Ellisons are like, yes. While on the originals chart, Hulu's Only Murders in the Building Season 5 has started. And perhaps Alien Earth got kicked off this chart by Friendly Fire, as they're both Hulu shows. But come on, Hulu, you can't have more than one original on here at once. It's just bad for Alien Earth. It's bad. And I love that show, but you gotta call them like they are. Then with movies, Netflix is not just doing well here with K-pop Demon Hunters, but with a bunch of guilty pleasures as well. And speaking of a guilty pleasure, I'm guilty of watching The Wrong Paris. Oh my gosh, it wasn't my idea, but I'm surprised to say I really enjoyed it. It's like, this is actually pretty good. My friend was like, I see you smiling watching this movie. And I was like, All right, so anyway, Miranda Cosgrove, fantastic. Loved her on this. And Pearson Fode, that guy can actually act, although he sounds almost exactly like Matthew McConaughey, to the point where I think Matthew McConaughey should consider suing. But if I were producing a big franchise, any big franchise, I'd say let's have him come in and read for one of the roles. Did anyone else watch The Wrong Paris? You could admit it. It's okay. It's a safe place. I did. Then, over on Netflix for just last week, K-pop Demon Hunters is once again under 20 million views for the week. So it has genuinely slowed down, but not by much. For some weird reason, Netflix has stopped updating its all-time chart because K-pop is certainly closing in on 400 million views total. It's weird for Netflix not to update it. They didn't update it last week either. Maybe they're waiting they want to surprise people with when it hits 400. All right, as for shows, it's no secret that the latest Monster is a massive disappointment and a rare misstep of this size. Ryan Murphy's made crap before, but never like this. But still, its opening viewership numbers are on par with Monsters, although neither was anywhere near Dahmer's debut. Evan Peters is very successful when he's with Ryan Murphy. That's a good actor, director, producer combo. I think Evan Peters is more of a star in the streaming space than he is the movie space. What are your thoughts on that? Monsters managed to hold steady for a few weeks, though. But with the poor reaction to this new Monster, it'll be interesting to see what kind of hold it has going into its first full week when we look at next week's charts. Maybe bringing Charlie Hunnam back for the next installment, focusing on Lizzie Borden, wasn't the best idea. People complain about too long breaks between seasons and I think people want their TV shows every year, but they want a couple of years actually between movies, interestingly enough. But one of the reasons it's worth maybe waiting a little bit, you don't want to follow up something so closely, is that you need to see the reaction to the latest part, because then maybe you would go, let's get rid of Charlie Hunnam. But it's too late for that. Although I think the first Monster to focus on a female killer will certainly garner a lot of attention. However, Christina Ricci, Chloe Sevigny, and even Elizabeth Montgomery of Bewitched fame, who apparently is also actually or was related to Lizzie Borden, have already portrayed the real life killer. House of Guinness, are you interested in the Lizzie Borden story? I thought that it was such a big misstep with this last Monster and so all over the place that, I'll check the first episode out again, but I think that the Monster brand has been hurt. How do you feel? Then House of Guinness and Black Rabbit are also not really working out for Netflix, and all these underperforming shows are making Wayward look pretty great. Over on digital with Apple's charts, more good news for Warner Brothers. More! Zazzy's like, send that to David Ellison's too. Send him this. But yeah, 2 of them horror. And then technically they partnered with Apple on F1. Although Apple might get all the digital revenue, especially because, maybe on their streamings. Again, it might have just been a theatrical partnership. But still, technically theirs. A Nightmare on Elm Street is also their franchise with The Collection at number 9. Then Freakier Friday and Downton Abbey are also doing pretty good, but not as great. In fact, both of Disney's FF movies, Freakier Friday and Fantastic Four, are probably hurt by the knowledge that they'll soon be on Disney Plus at no extra cost. That's a double-edged sword. Disney's losing out on their digital revenue, but that means a lot of people still have Disney Plus, so they don't have to deal with churn. So maybe when all is said and done, they're still, making a lot of revenue through subscriptions. Digital is a la carte pricing. So there's real value in that as well. But Universal and Warner Brothers, I think, are doing the best in the digital space right now. And it's touching to see many of Diane Keaton's films doing well in the wake of her passing. Although I'm very surprised to see it's the first Wives Club that made the top 10 here, while her other arguably more famous films are all lower down. And methinks the culprit is that Apple, for some reason, how hard is it to get this together, did not make a top banner for her on their platform. Instead, she just has a line below, like you have to scroll down to see Remembering Diane Keaton. And First Wives Club is the second movie listed. Not a great look, Apple, when you did a better job spotlighting Robert Redford. Diane Keaton didn't even get a picture on hers. That's nuts to me. What are your favorite Diane Keaton movies? As for this coming week, more horror. 'Tis the season. And this time it's Universal's Black Phone 2, which I know a lot of you are excited about, so it should easily win the weekend. It could actually do quite well. The review embargo has already lifted, but the majority of press screenings are on Tuesday, and that's when I'll be seeing the film myself. I'm also very excited about Good Fortune. The press screenings are the same day. I opted for Black Phone, but and then Frankenstein. I'm going to see Frankenstein on the end of the week, and I'm going to review it. So Good Fortune's really losing out there. I hope that's not the case for a lot of people. Does Good Fortune look theater-worthy to you? It looks theater-worthy to me. That cast is incredible. I'm actually really excited about it, and I wish the press screening was on a different day. All right, well, then also After the Hunt, whose own awards prospects have gone up in smoke, goes wide, if anyone's still interested. And I don't think they are. On digital on Tuesday, a big, bold, beautiful journey drops. And I got to tell you, while I don't think it's a very good movie, I think it's probably actually a decent stream, even just to have on in the background, as it has some really great moments in it. I'd actually kind of recommend it as a stream. Maybe you should wait until it's like no extra cost or it's available for rent. I don't know if it's worth like a high price purchase or rental, but I'd keep an eye on it if I were you. You might get desperate enough, and even if you were just moderately desperate, I think you could click on it. Then with streaming movies, Netflix has animated movie The Twits on Friday. But this week, the real action is with shows. The Chair Company starts tonight on HBO with Tim Robinson, hot off of his small hit Friendship. He might actually be making something of himself finally. While on Monday, Hulu has the final season of Solar Opposites, and Netflix has an animated Splinter Cell series dropping on Tuesday. Wednesday sees the return of Loot on Apple TV, and here comes more true crime. Ryan Murphy, at the very least, is a trendsetter with the drama Murdaugh, Death in the Family on Hulu on Wednesday, and the documentary series Devil in Disguise, John Wayne Gacy on Peacock on Thursday. Also on Thursday, season 3 of The Diplomat. Oh my gosh, I don't cover this show because it doesn't generate a lot of chatter, but it's personally one of my favorite streaming shows. As soon as Netflix sent out the screeners, ridiculously early, like a month and a half ago, I watched them immediately. I watched this new season in 2 days. I watched it as fast as I could. And it's arguably their best season yet. And they're coming off of 2 very good seasons. They got a ton of Emmy nominations. They didn't win any, but maybe they will with this new season. It's got a ton of really cool twists and turns as well. So make sure you watch it right away if you're a fan, so you don't get any of those spoiled for you. Fantastic depiction of a female president with Allison Janney. It's the best female president I've seen in media to date. And that made me also very happy. It's so good. I can't recommend it enough. Then on Friday, Apple TV has documentary Mr. Scorsese. Well, look at this. The Chosen gets animated on Prime Video. Knowing how popular the live-action film series is, this could be big. We'll have to keep an eye out for it on the Nielsen Ratings chart. We'll find out in a month. Nielsen's so ridiculously slow. All right, and that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what do you think Tron Ares' second weekend drop is going to be? Man, at least it holds on to its IMAX screens for one more week. And I'm telling you, if you even have an inkling of going, don't miss it in IMAX 3D. It's truly an incredible experience. Okay, share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.